Thank you for joining me today on the next Broadleaf Members Spotlight. Really appreciate you sitting down with me and chatting about your writing today. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, my name is Kristine Rudolph, and I am a mom of three. I have let's see if I get this right, a junior in high school, a sophomore in high school, and an 11-year-old, and then two dogs who right now are as demanding as the children. um, I grew up in Tennessee and in Texas. I spent most of my summers in Texas and then moved to Texas. So I came to Atlanta in 1998 from Austin and I've been here continuously since then. I live in Decatur right now. And I started, oh goodness. See, I told you the dogs were going to be as demanding as the children.
We actually I can't hear them, so I think you're fine.
Well, I think she has to go out. So I have to let her out. She's had a little illness. So
Oh,
you get to walk through my house with me. We get to
it's
do
a
the,
tour.
yeah, you get to do the tour. So, I went to law school and have not practiced law after moving to Atlanta. But when I first started writing, I figured I may as well leverage that law degree. And so I started writing first for adults. And so I started writing very purposefully with the intent of publication in 2003. And I self-published a novel, and the whole time I was working full-time as well. I self-published my first novel, which was it was kind of I needed to get out of my system and have somebody read my writing and get it out there. And then after that, I wrote two more adult novels and it was actually at Broadleaf. I had a moment of real clarity when I had one of my agent meetings. And the agent said to me, if you are not willing, I was kind of writing domestic thrillers is what I would say. And he said to me, if you are not willing to really go very dark and very big in that third act, then this may not be the genre for you. And turns out he was really right. So I made this shift to writing for children, and I write for upper middle grades and love that. And so now I freelance write. I work for organizations that kind of need help with their messaging, and I beta read. I beta read just on my own, and then also with the spun yarn. And I write my own books. I've had three in the hands of my agent. The fourth one just got sent last week, and you can't find any of them on the shelves yet, but my fingers are still crossed. Please, I need all the info I can get.
Well, I know that that process, that waiting game is the worst. It can really take some patience. Um, so what has inspired some of your stories? Can you tell us a little bit about a few of them?
Yeah, actually, yes, just yesterday I went to speak to a class of like 46th graders about the whole process of writing. They're about to begin working on their own kind of narrative writing, and the teachers said they're very averse to editing. And I said, yeah, we all are.
Mm,
It's hard for all of us.
yep.
So she said if if they could see that like real writers edit. So I went and presented to them, and I walked them through. I used Shannon Hale had a quote lately that was on Twitter. It'll still be Twitter for me. And she said she has to remember that when she's writing her first draft, it's like she's putting sand in a box so that she can build castles later. So I kind of played off of that metaphor, which is really a compelling metaphor. The more you think about it, that creative process is when you just shove everything there, and then you kind of like sculpt and it takes shape, and then you start to layer in some detail. So I loved it. And it resonated with the kids. But in going through that metaphor, I realized that I always start with a what if question, which is I like to say it's like the positive side of my tremendous anxiety and OCD, because I'm asking what What if the moon just drops out of the sky? What if I walk to my mailbox and somebody comes around the corner too fast? All of those worries are grounded in what if, but so are my stories. So the most recent one that I just submitted was the what if two girls in different decades got comfort from the same hiding place, like they went to the same hiding place, what would they both experience there? The one before that, the question was, what if a child got strep throat on a very, very important day in 6th grade, and she thought that literally that was the worst thing that could ever happen, but the fact that she wasn't at school that day ended up saving her life.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. The kids are like, I want to read that book. And then before that, another book was, what if a superstar, a soccer superstar, goes missing and an obsessed fan goes on a journey to find her? And then the fourth of my children's books, the what if was, what if the only person who will listen is someone who died a long time ago. So I always start with the what if, and the what ifs come from, the same place all the anxiety comes from, just kind of looking around and observing. Although this morning on my walk, the early what ifs for my next project began. And I can say, for example, I had been toying with this idea, and it really coalesced after reading a story in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution yesterday. And so I do try to read and expose myself to so many, like, for example, I read the obituary page every single day, because that's literally life stories put out for public consumption. So I
never thought about it like that. You're right. Yeah.
It is. I mean, and they're presented, there's so many layers, because they're presented by the people who are still living. In some instances, people write their own obituaries, but largely it's, I sometimes try to guess who it is. Is this the surviving spouse? Was it a child? Who does it benefit to have it framed this way? I get very interested when a former spouse is mentioned, when a former spouse is left out. I'm super nosy. And I read, I read these obituaries. I read, if I'm out for a walk and I see a memorial bench, I will stop and I will look at it and I will Google that person. I'm just kind of always soaking up stories everywhere I go.
So I have to ask, and I don't know if this is as prevalent around you as it is me. Have you seen those folks driving around with like the stickers on the back of their car for memorials for people? Do you Google those folks too?
Not while I'm driving. No,
Well,
not while I'm driving. Some of those are harder, because you don't have any context. So like, I live very close to the Olmsted Linear Parks, and there are a lot of memorial benches on there, and you can kind of figure out that the person probably lived in that neighborhood. So you can Google around on them, but if they're just in a car, also, I won't do it while I'm driving. But so yeah, no, I do have my limits. So, yeah, no.
well, I figured maybe if it was a passenger seat kind of activity.
Yeah, well, I'm never in the passenger seat. I'm always driving children everywhere, all over the city.
So going from kind of that, you call it kind of a domestic fiction, that adult genre, over into a children's genre, a middle grade genre, that's a pretty big leap. What drew you to the middle grades as a genre for you to write in?
Well, I had like a focus group in my house, so that was great. But I had this moment where I was thinking, as my children get older, how do I want to spend my time? And the thought of living in this world of dark, the dark places in human minds did not really appeal to me. And I wanted to stay in conversation with children, and I wanted to stay in conversation with children about books. It's just my favorite thing. And so the best way to do that then is to, either go back to school and become a librarian or an English teacher, or to write for them. So, and once I started, it was so natural. It was very validating when I started that first book, because now I'd been writing for a long time, but it was better than anything I'd written before, because it it appealed to my I guess my earnestness and my view of the world just tends to be more I'm not going to say childlike, but more yeah, I mean just earnest would be the best way to say it. I'm just not really a jaded kind of person, and so that's an easy thing to bring into a middle grade novel, and was making the dark psychological thrillers really hard. Maybe a little too chirpy.
You, it's a chipper psychological. Oh,
Yeah,
but
it's a
I
lot
love
of
that.
fun. It's a rompy domestic thriller.
Oh, I love that though, because I feel like we do kind of have a bit of a jaded worldview, just generally speaking. A lot of folks kind of see the darker sides of things. So being able to look at it from a light side and embrace that kind of optimism, kind of hope. I love that. I feel like that's a gift, and I love that you get to share that with children.
Well, my books are sad though, is the irony. My books are very sad. And actually, that was with the one that landed me my agent. I mean, we got that ready to send out on submission right before COVID, and we were just like, we can't do this. It's too sad. No
Oh,
editor's going to want to read this. And I trust children to handle difficult material. I, as a parent, want my children to experience the difficulties in life in a story and in a book before they experience them out in the world.
mm,
I think it's a very important role that literature plays for the developing mind. And so my obsessed, like the author I would aspire to be and who I just adore in the children's realm is Kate DiCamillo. She has amazing range. Her stories are they're just everything. They're just everything to me. I love them. And she wrote an essay in Time magazine, and she had been asked a question, I think it was by another author at a forum, about whether it's okay to tell children the sad things about the world, the truths of the world. And her response, and I'm going to bungle it, but it was so inspiring to me. And she said, it's our responsibility to tell the truth in a way that makes it bearable. And her
mm,
example was E.B. White's Charlotte's Web. And I do think, the more I ponder this, it is the most perfect children's book, because at the end of that story, I mean, the title character dies. Spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't know the story. The title character dies, and we have grown to love her over the pages. And yet it is a magical book. You still walk away with hope. And, there's the scene of spring coming, and Charlotte's descendants are, filling Wilbur's life. And so, White did it, took the reality that every creature dies, and we still walk away feeling that we loved and experienced that character, but that we can go on. And so that's what I hope to do. And it does, however, make writing like queries and synopses a little challenging sometimes, because that's a lot of that's in the detail and the nuance, where when you're just writing it out, it's like, ooh, that's heavy, that's that's difficult.
oh, but I like that. And I think too, there's still an element of hopeful optimism in that. It's showing, yes, there are, in that specific example, yes, there are times that are going to break your heart in this world, but then there's new life at the end of it. There's still things to go on and enjoy. And I love that you get to
I,
bring that to young readers.
I was watching for the 47,000th time Still Magnolias a few weeks ago, because my girls had never seen it.
Oh,
And I
so
think
good.
that's the power of that storytelling as well. And, that was based on a true story. The screenplay was based on a play, and it was his sister who was Shelby, basically. And, at the end of that, you see Sally Field still sad, still missing her daughter, but acknowledging that life goes on, life moves on. And I think that's I think that you walk away from those stories feeling somehow like really human, really
Mm.
very human. So anyway.
So
Go ahead.
when you're I was going to ask, as you're going through your writing, it sounds like you have a lot of great inspirations. What are your go-to tools for kind of condensing all of these ideas into that book?
So I love that, because that was one of the things that when we built our sandcastles yesterday, one of the first things, you have to have the idea, you have to have the desire to build a sandcastle, and then you have to gather your tools. So, they were gathering their buckets and their sand and their, little specialized like paintbrushes and that kind of thing. And so I use Scrivener. Which is not a necessity for me, because I'm actually a pretty linear writer. I think the people who value Scrivener the most are the people who write in scenes and then kind of move the scenes all over the place. But I do find it incredibly useful to keep my character descriptions. I'm going to the left side because that's where they are on the screen. My character descriptions, my research, like just all right there that I can get to quickly, because I have the kind of brain that if I store it somewhere else, like I used to keep them in notes on my computer, and if I have to go to another application, then I'm like, oh, wait, I need to schedule that doctor's appointment for the child. So I need to have nothing take me out of the writing when I finally get time carved out. So I use Scrivener, but before I even get to Scrivener, I use a yellow legal pad and pen. And I would probably describe myself as a plantser. I plot out the main story arc, and it's usually like bullet points. It's nothing fancy. So, maybe 3 pages of that. This latest book was the first one I've done that was a dual point of view, and it's contemporary and historical. So in that case, I did the first character's plot, the second character's plot, and then kind of as they converged, I did the plot. But so normally I just kind of, just flip through those pages and write that out. And then I'll usually do a little character description. I'm really bad with visuals. So I don't do like a Pinterest board or anything, but I will find, like, I'll use Zillow and I'll find a house that approximates the house that my characters live in, so that I can go to Zillow and say, like, spatial reasoning is I'm not great at. So I'll be like, oh, okay, to the left of the front door is the door to the living room, and that's that sort of thing. And that helps me like place the characters in that. So I use that. For this historical bit, I used a ton of personal interviews. My story takes place in Atlanta, and the historical part was in the 1960s. So a lot of like my friends' parents were alive then. So, and my mom is of that age. She's not in Atlanta, but I would call her and just be like, okay, you're 12 years old, you are taking off your church clothes, and you're going to play with your friend. Describe to me the outfit you're taking off and the outfit you're putting on. And so there we go. But interestingly, I do my first draft in Scrivener, but I don't ever edit in Scrivener. I mean, I'll if I see an error, obviously I'll fix it. But for whatever reason, I mean, one reason is the font's really small there. But I will then I use a Mac, so Pages, and put it in Pages so that I can edit. And this round, I had my iPad with my Apple Pencil or whatever, and did it that way. So, but in the past, I've always printed them out. But the Apple Pencil turned out to be a real gift. Don't have the best handwriting, so I need to be very careful about like writing the words back, because there was a lot of like, what did I mean there? And so yeah, so those are the literal tools I use to write.
What is something you wish you had known before you launched your writing career?
I mean, how many hours do you have? One of the things, yeah. One of the things is just how long it does take you to cultivate the craft. I mean, I was a great writer. I, graduated from a top 25 law school in the top 10% of my class. I could craft a legal argument. So, I had a lot of technical proficiency where professional writing was concerned. I had done a lot of persuasive writing. I had been a fundraiser. I did a lot of persuasive writing. So I thought, I'm a good writer. I can do this. And there's writing, and then there's telling a story. And the craft of telling a story, I had not given enough thought to. And so I mean, I would say I'm learning every single day still. But I would have not been so, got to get it out there, got to get published, blah, blah, blah. I would have done a lot more just sitting back and writing things just for the sake of writing. And a corollary to that, sorry, I have a grandfather clock. A corollary to that is that I would have gotten my writing in front of more people who were also writing earlier on. I do have a critique partner who I've had for maybe 15 years now, but I think early on I was just kind of giving it to friends and they're, oh, girl, that's great, but I needed people who were really going to push me and help me grow as a writer. And that was, I mean, I probably wasted 5 years not doing that.
Well, I know you had mentioned at a Broadleaf conference that you had met an agent who had kind of helped you realign the genres that you were focused on. How else has being part of a writing community helped you find that support or inspiration for your writing career?
Well, I got my agent because of Broadleaf. So
Oh, nice.
I took part in the First Pages critique, and it was 2019. Yeah, so like September, October 2019. And my weekends are crazy in the fall because I've got 2 soccer playing kids and then a third kid. And so I had to leave early that day because of a soccer game or event. And when I got home from whatever it was I went to, I can't remember, it was an email or a text message from Zach Steele saying that one of the agents responded to my first page and wanted to talk to me the next morning. So that was amazing. I was very excited. And so I gathered the materials that she needed to see, because I don't think I was even pitching at that point. I can't remember if I had pitch appointments or not, but I don't think I did. So I got to the event that next morning, and Benji Carr, I'll never forget this. He was in the row behind me and he passed me a note that was said, the agent's name, really loved your stuff. You're supposed to meet with her. And it was so adorable. It was like such a flashback to 4th grade. But to see, I mean, I might get a little misty, because to see people who are also in the struggle, like, be so genuinely excited for me, that was just everything. I learned something at every single panel. I've gotten to have amazing conversations with brilliant writers. I think about the lunch that I had with Jocelyn Jackson. I sat next to her, and for an hour we chatted about her work, and she asked me for some thoughts on a plot line that she was developing, that then I later got to read that book. I mean, where else does that happen? So that's amazing. And then I've just developed friendships with people who understand what this life is like. And it can be incredibly, incredibly challenging to face. I have faced now 20 years of rejection with a couple of yeses peppered in there. And I have cried a lot. It has definitely affected my self-worth. And I have wonderful friends. I have amazing friends, and I'll try to have conversations with them about what this means to me. And they're like, but you're so good, and you're such a good writer. Yeah. And it is so nice to be with people who actually understand the slog, that they live the slog, that they know how much that rejection hurts, and they also know why you keep doing it, even though you keep getting the rejection. It's so that shared community, honestly, I think I would have given up a long time ago if I had not found Broadleaf. It's been very meaningful to me.
I think that's my favorite part, that supportive and understanding of the struggle. And it's something that I feel like every writer, if you, like you said, if you don't find it, it becomes harder and harder and harder for you to keep pushing through. So
I mean, I'm sure the people who are just superstars right out of the gate don't need it, but those of us who are toiling away
in the real world.
yeah. Millie Bobby Brown probably does not need a Broadleaf Writers Association, but I need it.
So are you working on anything right now? Like, have you got anything in the works?
Well, so like I said, that story finally kind of coalesced for me, and that is how it happens. I will noodle and noodle and noodle and noodle, and then just I will see something, and it's like, that just brought it together. That's the story. I'm ready to go. So I'm very excited to start writing again. My last book is in the hands of my agent, and I had a walk with a friend who's a elementary and middle school librarian this morning, and we went over her notes on the project. And after that walk, I was like, okay, I need to put that away. I need to emotionally detach from that, and I need to start on this next story. And now that I really have a sense of what that story can be, I'm excited again, because I did have that like, oh great, I sent her another one that's not going to sell, So it's good to be excited again. But yeah, my expectation is it'll be contemporary. I liked writing the historical bit in the last one. It was very, very, very long for me. Like having to do that research. And again, that with my ability to get distracted, I would go down a rabbit hole. And that's just, I don't lead the kind of lifestyle where I can live in those rabbit holes. I usually get, I'm working only when my kids are at school, because I have to have silence in the house and no distraction, and, no appointments, no workers coming to do anything. So I've got to maximize my time, and to do justice to a historical fiction, you really need to dig in super, super deep. And and I don't have the bandwidth to do that again. I liked it. It made the story what it needed to be, but the next one is going to be all contemporary.
Something a little closer to home.
Yeah. And yeah, and I mean that's not to say there aren't challenges even in like making sure you're not anachronistic. Technology moves so fast, and what kids do and how they talk moves so fast. I mean, you still have to do research, and I'm still always paying attention and listening. It's just that that research will be just, one step away instead of 3, 4, 5 steps away.
Yeah, I just was catching on to the term yeet, and then I was informed by my daughter that yeet was now cringe.
Okay, yeah, we're done. We're done with that.
I'm like,
Well,
okay then.
I was sitting in the library one day when my son was in 8th grade, and the aftercare was in there, and there was this table of like 10 boys, and they were behaving terribly. And I just sat there and I was listening to them talk, and it dawned on me, I will never be able to recreate the actual dialogue of kids in my age range. I can't try, because to your point, it will change. And it would be unreadable. I mean, like right now, it would just be like, bruh, yeah, like, yeah, bruh. I mean, that's all they would say.
3 pages of bruh.
Yeah, and the intonation, it tells you what you need to know. Or like, yeah, like I know, yeah. I love you so much. I mean, like my daughter's conversations are very coded, we'll say. There's a lot of coding in the teenage world, and I can't do that.
Well, where can folks connect with you?
So, well, I actually send out a weekly newsletter every Friday. I send out a newsletter. Well, I say every Friday, it's actually almost every Friday, because sometimes life does get in the way. And so I have a website, KristineRudolph.com, and on the contact page, they can sign up for my newsletter. And I talk about story there. It's not all about books. It's not all about literature. But I talk about story. I talk about parenting. I throw in some recipes. I try to curate things that people aren't going to see in just their normal, like, reading the Washington Post, New York Times, that kind of stuff. I try to find different voices, unique voices, but it's just like kind of whatever interests me. Like, for example, I think this week I'm including a link to this sterling silver bubble wand that's like a baby gift. People give sterling silver spoons. This is a bubble wand, and I'm just like, hey, that's a thing that exists. That's interesting to me. So not a link like, oh, you should buy this. It's more just the curiosity of the thing. So yeah, so KristineRudolph.com, on the contact page is where you can sign up for that. And I would love, and at the end of all of those emails, I say, let's chat, respond to me, and it's crazy, it's funny because sometimes I'll include stories about sex, and everybody reads those. I can see that people read those, and nobody asked me questions about those. But I'll get feedback. Oh, I made this recipe, or I read that book too. Let's talk about that. Because a lot of times I'll say, I just read this book. I have got to talk to somebody about it. I'm about to burst. So I'll have book conversations. That's the place where people can find information on my beta reading. And I do some specialized like authenticity reads for legal issues. And I have a Facebook page and I have an Instagram page, and they each have kind of a different feel to them. I'm also on X, formerly Twitter. That's where I tend to be kind of most political. So most of my book stuff happens on Instagram. I have a very big highlight section of all the books that I love and book events and booky things. So
Okay. And we'll make sure to include those links in the write-up as well, so it'll be easy for folks to click on those. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you. I can't wait to put this out in the world and let some more folks get to know you.
I really appreciate it.